Welcome back, Ninja community and persons that might have watched my quality statement disclaimer video. If you haven't seen that already, you should probably go and check that out. Now in this video, I'm going to be covering some techniques with a Nunchucku. Okay. This set here I've had for a very long time. I actually made my very first set, and my first mentor traded the set that I made for one of his first sets, right? That was given to him by his mentor, and I think Yoshi Kai. Okay, so I've had this set for a very long time. I even took this very same set with me when I deployed to Afghanistan, and I used it as a workout tool while I was deployed. And so this set here has literally been through hell and back. Okay, so I will cover about as much techniques as I really could in this video. So before I really get into my showing some, I guess, basics, starting with some basics of Nunchucku, and this makes for one of the best weapons to start out with. Like, I started out on this when I was about 9 years old, and it see, nunchucks, they'll let you know when you mess up, especially if you're using a real set. Okay, they'll let you know real quick if you try to do something that you weren't shown how to use, right? So before I get into showing the techniques on the Nunchucku, I will go over my quality statement and disclaimer real quick, so bear with me. The viewer understands, oh yeah, this is mostly for liability. Okay, the viewer understands my quality statement and disclaimer video. Additionally agrees that this video could be treated as is with ballistic protection, which in short means I don't have a seal on it. Therefore, I don't guarantee the techniques and or your application of the techniques. And if you're watching this video with the intention of using its content in committing a crime, that is additionally a crime. Actually using my content in committing a crime is an additional crime. Okay, so one of the first things you should do before you start any training on a nunchuck is this pop here. Okay, this pop here tests your rope. The practical application is to test the rope or chain, and I've actually had more chains break on me than ropes. This right here, I've replaced the original rope only twice. This is like the third rope that's ever been in this one, and then I replaced it with 550 cord, which is called 550 cord because that's the test amount of pounds of a certain length of the cord of what it will hold is about 550 pounds. Okay, so as you can see, a little bit of natural wear and tear is going to happen to the Nunchucku. It's like even with the chain ones, the ball bearings and the connection will typically break. And because the chain and replacement parts are usually only about $10, roughly so as a set of nunchucks, most people just buy a new set, and instead of fixing an old set. If it's sentimental like this one is, of course it's better if it's a rope one. They're much easier and cheaper to replace. Now, the first movements or techniques that I would get into is mostly like how you're standing. Whatever footwork your form practices, or whatever you're accustomed to, try to stick with your own footwork. If you have a solid foundation, it's better to build on that instead of like starting over in a different style or form. Okay, but a lot of times the movements would typically be the same as like what kind of strikes they are, where they're going. But for simplicity, I will cover just where I would start with Nunchucku. Okay, so since we've really already covered the quality statement and disclaimer, I'll get into some of the movements, the very first movements that one should practice, in my opinion. Okay, so the very first one is always remember to check the weapon, check the rope, this top, because you don't want a piece flying off in random directions, especially if you decide that it would be a good idea to train indoors. You could accidentally break something that might be expensive. Okay, so you check it. The next thing I would teach is this movement here, okay, or moving here side to side, right? What this does is it gets you accustomed to the idea that this is a fluid weapon and that you're bouncing it and not striking yourself. Okay? You're not hitting yourself, it's stopping near the rope and coming back. Okay. So this. And I would probably even add in a little bit of movement. Like if your form or style practices steps, okay, get accustomed to moving while you do this, because this is quite important. Most recognized forms will show the Nunchucku several techniques before the student starts to learn how to move with it. This is not very practical in my opinion. The student should begin with the simplest movements with a nunchuck and learn to move around while using the nunchuck. The practical application is that you don't want to be standing still in a real fight. And to effectively use a nunchuck in a real fight, you would need to move around. Okay? So, again, whatever your footwork is, if you have a solid foundation on it, you can build on that while learning this. This is just like an extra, like a bay window or something. So once you have this down, okay, I would probably go to just a diagonal strike. The diagonal strike coming from up here. It's important more to watch this on and coming back. The person should already be comfortable with the idea that this is not hitting yourself, it is striking near. Now, the power starts here, and most of the power is out this direction. Okay, and like swinging a baseball bat, it loses power as it goes by. Kind of like if this were a baseball bat and someone were swinging a baseball bat, when you come to back here, you stop. But because it is a fluid weapon on somewhat of a hinge, if you stop halfway or midway, the weapon is likely to come back. And stopping midway is typically how you would wind up getting injured. So, this movement, okay, this diagonal strike. Another part, once the diagonal strike has gotten down, is to bring the other arm up as you strike. Okay? This serves two purposes. The purpose is that your opponent does not know if the weapon is coming from above or from below. Okay? It also brings your arm up in the guard area as opposed to being low so that you could accidentally strike your arm, causing or potentially causing an injury. So this diagonal strike and coming straight back. That is one that I would have them. Of course, the swapping of arms should probably be done at around the same time. So we'll say this, 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 okay, and that. Okay, so moving on to the next technique would be a strike from underneath. What the strike is it's an underneath strike. It could happen at the groin, at the chin, or even near the stomach. Okay. Of course, being familiar with moving around while you strike. Okay. The next thing I would show would be, once this diagonal strike happens, coming back to here. I believe in some forms they call this triangles. Here, here, here. And at the same time, moving around. Okay? While doing the strike. And the next that I would do would be from underneath. Okay, is adding twirl. Right? This makes for a fairly decent workout. And getting used to moving while you are using the weapon. I suggest to not do something outside of your comfort zone. Beginning, it should be moving forward while doing that. If you just started with moving while doing the underneath strike, added the twirl, okay, or spin. This right here, this triangle, right? Should merely be intuitive after someone has learned that set. Okay, it should be twirl and back, twirl and twirl back. Okay. Now another tip, if you're beginning to learn, is with the rope. There's certain sizes for the rope. If your wrist, or what could be considered proper, if your wrist, if the rope is, like, even if you turn it to the side this way, right, should hang freely, so there could be a little bit more tightness here, or as wide as the neck. Typically, what's normal is the length between here and here. At some point, it would cause the nunchucku to be widened. Right? And as the widest you'd want it would be the width of your neck. Okay. But if you're beginning training and you start with a rope one, you could shorten the rope. And this serves a purpose for training. And that is that if you are doing some movements, it's less likely to cause an injury by accidentally hitting yourself in the back of the head. Which gets to my next technique that I'll show. Okay. The next move is just with one arm to strike down, right, with a spin and catch over the arm. Okay, that looks like this. Okay. You can see it. Okay. Now, if the rope is longer, as some sets are, and the student was holding the nunchucku out here as they went to do this movement, and they caught it up in here, the rest of the nunchuck could fly back and hit them in the head accidentally. Okay. The best place to hold the nunchucku is in the center. This gives you a balance between control and power, right? Between control and power. In some cases, just think of it like a baseball bat that is on a hinge. Okay. Another tip for training is, this can apply with different weapons, but it is probably more so important with a nunchucku, and that is when beginning a new technique, to begin on your offhand. You have an offhand, or if you're ambidextrous and you chose an offhand, which typically only applies to offhand weapons. All right, so begin a new technique on your offhand first, so that when you switch to the other hand, you intuitively know the movement or technique with that hand. It would typically be more practice on your offhand. Okay, so getting back to this catch. Okay, from this position, right, you could return back. You could even throw it out that way. That is probably a bit more advanced move. But from here, just throwing it out. Okay, for a catch, it's kind of like your just a strike and a spin and catch. Okay, just a strike, spin and catch. Going back to the basics, is here, here, okay, here, here, here. And of course, practicing moving while you are learning is essential to being effective while using a nunchuck in a real fight. Of course, if someone was standing there using the nunchuck without getting tired from it, because a different set of muscles is typically being used in using a nunchuck than like lifting weights or doing push-ups or sit-ups. You know, you don't want to get into a push-up competition with someone who does push-ups all the time. You don't want to get into a weightlifting competition with someone who lifts weights all the time. And you really don't want to get into a fight with someone who practices hitting and how to hit properly all the time. Okay? So, the technique that I would teach you next, let's see, and the purpose behind it. See, most people, when they see a set of nunchucks, they think that it is a effective striking weapon, and that would be very correct. There are some movements in kaitas that typically don't seem to have much purpose. However, if you understand the purpose of the movement or technique hidden within a kaita, it gives it more context and how it applies in a real combat type situation. With like a set of nunchucks, one of the first things that some teachers teach is this catch here, okay? And it doesn't seem to have much purpose unless you're in the scenario where your opponent has a set of nunchucks and they have thrown the weapon around the back of your head, right? You can see. If your opponent has thrown the nunchucks around the back of your head and they're getting ready to throw you or crank down a lock on your neck, okay? This technique, this motion, is to resist that throw or choke or neck break. And I won't cover neck breaks in these videos. Okay. Even some of the fancier moves, a lot of people could tell that the spins, like across the knuckles, typically don't have much application in actually striking. The context of learning those spins across the knuckles is that once you strike something, it's typically going to bounce back or bounce across, and that's where you would keep the weapon from being disarmed from yourself when you strike an opponent. So, if you've watched the video so far, go ahead and hit like hard like a ninja, and subscribe to my channel to be alerted for when I do random videos on YouTube. Let's see, I could cover more with the nunchuck. Let's see, what should I really cover with the nunchuck? Oh, we get into using with legs. Now, I had a student once who was ambidextric and did not have the flexibility to throw decent high kicks or even low kicks for that matter. So the nunchucks seem, even double nunchucks seem to be something that person could build on, because if they're horrible at kicks, double nunchucku, it is nearly impossible to start throwing kicks with double nunchucks. Even a single nunchuck, it's very difficult. Now, I've seen some amazing martial artists out there. Don't know if they're really using real nunchucks like I do. And like some places you walk into, one of the giveaways, the dead giveaway that you're walking into make a dojo, is if you see a bunch of people wearing black belts, or you see someone under 10 years old wearing a black belt. A black belt should be about the equivalent of a bachelor's or a master's degree. So if you see a 10-year-old with a bachelor's or a master's degree, that should raise some questions. Okay, I don't know if they're aliens born with like all of their teeth as newborns. You know, that's just kind of weird to me. Okay, so getting into the more advanced movements with a nunchucku. Now, again, I suggest that someone learn the beginning moves while they learn how to move with it, so that they can be an effective fighter using the nunchucku in a real fight. Okay, so I will start the next movements. You should already be familiar with some type of lower body kick or movement. You don't have to drastically modify the form that you already practice. Just try to make it applicable to the form you have, if your form has a solid foundation. Okay, so the first thing on utilizing this with the lower body, if you've seen some of my other videos where I cover some nunchucku talking about boots, okay, it being highly important that you practice while wearing boots, because the side could like stick your foot, you know, causing an injury. So a lower body strike, right, this is not really kicking at your nunchucku, okay? what this is you are stopping the nunchucku. In a scenario where your opponent, where you might need to block a kick at the same time that you are striking, and we're already dedicated to the strike, this would have an application. Okay? So the movement is just one of those diagonal strikes like that, right? To there. Okay? So the next movement would be across the shin. Okay? And it is catching it at the rope. Okay? You're not striking your kneecap. That would be very bad. You don't want that. You're putting the rope, much like with here, you're putting the rope across the shin. Okay? And this is also a block to a kick. And it has other applications, however, I will not cover the other applications in this video. Of course, feel free to check out my other videos here on YouTube and subscribe to be alerted for when I do run the videos. Okay. So if you have the check, practicing stepping, right? Could be another exercise. Okay. So, one of the most popular / unpopular techniques is striking this way. Okay? Now the person isn't actually hitting themselves down there, and I advise against beginning with that move, especially if you stop out here accidentally. You don't want to be doing that. How I would practice or begin teaching that is to get into a wider stance and to practice the movement or technique further away from vital areas. Okay? In a real combat situation, the downward strike across the top of the head is something that might happen, or even just moving into a position where the strike would be there. Okay, it's something that could potentially happen. Using the nunchuck behind the back, right? The application to me seems more like you are avoiding being disarmed by someone who's trained with a nunchucku. Because this is one of the most feared weapons in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. It is also one of the easiest weapons to defend against, if one knows how to defend against a nunchuck. Okay? So, if you like my video, again, feel free to hit like hard like a ninja. And you can also check me out on my Facebook under my artist name, Melel. That's M-E-L-E-L, or my 10th ninja name. And subscribe to be alerted when I do random videos. I also have an Instagram, but I'm not telling you what my Instagram name is because you'll just have to be ninja and figure that out on your own. So, again, with a nunchuck, safety is very important. Because if you're training with a real set, they'll let you know in about 0.3 seconds, give or take, if you did a technique very, very wrongly. So you can share my video with people who are ninja, but not with people who ought to be ninja, because they might accidentally learn something. Until next time, stay ninja, my friends. Stay ninja.